10 years had passed since the fall of the Jedi Order. The silenced screams of the Council had been lost in the shadows of the new regime. The Galactic Empire, under the iron fist of Emperor Palpatine, had spread like a disease from the heart of the core worlds to the far reaches of the Outer Rim. Oppression had become the new order, and the voices that once cried out for freedom now whispered in fear. Palpatine ruled not only through politics, but through terror, manipulating senators, eliminating dissidents, and using the dark side of the Force to maintain absolute control over the galaxy. At his side, Darth Vader had become the living face of Imperial terror. Imposing, relentless, he hunted the surviving Jedi like cursed ghosts. On ruined planets, the sound of his mechanical breathing heralded destruction. Elite troops followed him in ruthless campaigns against any sign of rebellion. His red lightsaber glowed with the blood of those who dared to resist. Vader was a silent enforcer, but also an enigma. No one knew how much of his past still haunted him, and Palpatine knew in his depths that his apprentice was still incomplete. It was during a night of deep meditation, as the dark force pulsed around him, that Palpatine sensed something. A faint, yet powerful vision, like a crack in reality. A boy, a beacon of raw energy, not yet shaped. He sent probes. He found someone as blessed by the Force as Anakin once was. The Emperor imagined that the boy's midichlorian levels surpassed even the oldest records. The vision became clearer. Tatooine, a desolate planet where the Force had once tried to be born, and now was reborn. Palpatine smiled in the darkness. He did not know the boy's origin, didn't know his name was Skywalker. He only felt unmatched potential. Perhaps, finally, the ultimate successor in case Vader, burned and broken, one day fell and was no longer useful. Without alerting Vader, Palpatine summoned X, a bounty hunter and silent inquisitor known for his brutality. X was a methodical, relentless killer, and most importantly, obedient. You will find the boy on Tatooine. Bring him back alive, the Emperor ordered, his dark voice filling the chamber. Alive? Questioned X. You know my history. Palpatine stepped closer, eyes glowing with hatred. Which is exactly why I repeat. Alive. If you fail like the others, it will be the last mistake you ever make. And be discreet. Lord Vader must not know. Not yet. Days later, beneath the twin suns of Tatooine, the silence of the desert was broken. X had landed his ship in one of the remote valleys, hidden under camouflage. With advanced sensors and concealed weapons, he began the hunt. Luke Skywalker was still a 10-year-old boy living a simple life with his aunt and uncle, Owen and Beru Lars, unaware of who he was or what lay dormant inside him. X used miniature drones to monitor the property, observe patterns, map routines. He was precise, calculated. He waited for the perfect moment to strike, and it came under the cover of a sandstorm. Obi-Wan Kenobi felt the disturbance like a sudden pain. He didn't know who, but he knew what. Someone was looking for Luke. For years, he had watched him from afar, keeping hidden, protecting the legacy of Anakin Skywalker in secret. When he saw smoke on the horizon, he ran, but arrived too late. The Lars homestead was in ruins, burned. On the ground, the bodies of Owen and Beru. And there, emerging from the flames, was X, carrying an unconscious Luke in his arms. Kenobi stood still, cloak still flowing, lightsaber in hand. Put the boy down, he said, voice calm but threatening. X dropped Luke carelessly to the ground and activated his thrusters. The fight began. Obi-Wan spun his blue saber and blocked the first blaster shot. X responded with a pulse shot, but Kenobi dodged with a sideways leap, using the Force to throw sand into his opponent's sensors. X backed off, activated shoulder auto-targets, and fired 4 simultaneous shots. Kenobi spun and deflected 2 with his saber, dodging the others. X closed in with a pulsed energy blade, trying to impale the Jedi, but Obi-Wan dove to the ground, using the Force to hurl a rock at the Inquisitor's chest. X staggered, and Obi-Wan advanced with a flurry of 3 quick strikes, ending the battle with a precise blow that disabled X's systems. In that moment, Obi-Wan realized he no longer had the vigor of 10 years ago. His jumps were slower and predictable, his strikes delayed and imprecise. Age was catching up, but he still managed to protect the boy. Luke was still breathing. Kenobi knelt beside the boy, checking his vitals. He was alive but changed. Something had awakened inside him. Obi-Wan knew he could no longer hide. The time for neutrality had ended. But then he felt it, a subtle tremor in the Force. Small, but familiar. Aboard an Imperial cruiser not far away, Darth Vader paused his mission and stood still in silence. His eyes closed behind the mask. The Force was alive on Tatooine. Vader didn't know what, nor who, but the call was clear, powerful. And most disturbing of all was the location. That planet. That desert where Anakin Skywalker was born. That forgotten world he swore never to see again. But the vibration was too strong to ignore. He turned and ordered the ship. "Tatooine," he said simply. "Now." The Force that had manifested was conscious, alive. He had to discover its source, and unknowingly was about to confront the past he never buried. Obi-Wan took Luke in his arms and ran to the nearest hideout. X was still alive, but unconscious, temporarily neutralized. Kenobi knew reinforcements would come. He knew he didn't have much time. And in the sky, beyond the reddish clouds of Tatooine's dusk, a metallic sound sliced the silence. The shadow of the Inquisitor had been defeated, but the real darkness was on its way. In the days following the attack, Tatooine felt even more arid. The heat, always relentless, now carried the weight of death. Ben Kenobi walked among the ruins of the Lars homestead in silence, with Luke at his side. The boy was in shock, still trying to understand why his uncles wouldn't wake up. Ben knelt down and tried to explain. "They loved you, Luke, and gave their lives for you. But for a child who loved droids and dreamed of star battles, it was a nightmare that made no sense." "It was the Empire, wasn't it?" Luke whispered. Kenobi nodded gravely. "And they will return." Ben knew time was short. When he saw Imperial cruisers cutting across the sky on the horizon, he had no doubt. They had to escape. But where to? He considered Alderaan. Bail Organa was still an ally, a man who, above all, understood what Luke represented. He also thought of Ilum, a sacred place, though destroyed, where the Force still pulsed through forgotten ruins. But nowhere seemed safe. Imperial ships were everywhere. If they tried to escape, they'd be shot down before even reaching orbit. He needed a plan. And fast. Meanwhile, in one of Tatooine's vast open spaces, Darth Vader's personal ship landed beneath the shadow of the dunes, while hundreds of other ships patrolled the skies and nearby space. The dry, suffocating climate didn't bother the Sith. But as he walked through the sand he once knew with Anakin's bare feet, something broke inside him. The heat didn't touch him. The wind didn't reach him. No scent came to him anymore. He looked around, seeing shadows of a distant past, now unrecognizable. Everything was dead. Even his own childhood memories now felt like lies dressed in dust. Vader walked through the streets of Mos Espa like a stranger. None of it looked like he remembered. The village seemed poorer, more oppressed, as if the very empire he had helped build had drained all the life from that world. He passed the ruins of Watto's old shop, now just a scrap depot. He passed the square where his mother once hugged him and saw only trash and starving children. But before he could be consumed by memories, he received an urgent call, a signal from the Imperial patrols. X's ship had been found. Why would the Emperor send an Inquisitor here without informing me? Vader thought, anger rising beneath the mask. He ordered stormtroopers to sweep the area. Using sensors and search commands, they found traces of destruction leading to the old Lars homestead. Vader headed there quickly. Upon arrival, he saw the charred house and nearby, in an emergency cave once used by Tusken hunters, he found X. Gravely wounded, barely breathing, trying to hide in the shadows. Vader entered the shelter like a living shadow. X tried to speak but coughed up blood. "What were you doing here?" Vader asked, his voice echoing darkly. X tried to lie, mumbling about a navigational error. But Vader raised his hand. The Force tightened around his throat. "Don't lie to me," X struggled, unable to resist. The Emperor, he sent me. There was a boy. Vader squeezed harder. Why? Why didn't he tell me? X screamed. He said, you weren't supposed to know. The Force receded. Vader stepped back, processing. Palpatine was hiding something from him. Then, his communicator buzzed with urgency. Lord Vader, a ship just took off without clearance, heading west over the rocky formations. Without hesitation, Vader grabbed X by the shoulder, dragged him to his ship, and commanded, follow it. He didn't know who was on that ship, but something unsettled him. The same vibration he felt upon arriving on the planet was now stronger. He felt purpose, and he wasn't used to the Force responding with such clarity. The pursuit began. The ship piloted by Ben Kenobi tried to flee through the canyons. Luke, hidden in the rear cabin, watched the sky with wide eyes, but Vader was right behind them with his pilots and TIE fighters. With precise maneuvers, the shots hit the wings of Kenobi's ship, which spiraled through the air, blowing part of its thruster and crashing into one of Tatooine's isolated mountains. If not for the old Jedi's reflexes and skill, the ship would have exploded into millions of pieces upon impact. Dust and fire rose into the air. Vader's ship landed several meters ahead, imposing. From the hatch of the damaged ship, Obi-Wan emerged limping, blood dripping from his forehead, his cloak torn, but his saber was in hand. I knew you'd come, he said. Vader stared. You are unrecognizable. Obi-Wan smiled, exhausted. And you are dead inside. Vader walked slowly. The boy. Why is he so important? Obi-Wan raised the saber. You won't have him. Inside the ship, Luke watched everything, trembling, peeking through a shattered window, trying to understand the black armored giant who looked like something out of his worst nightmares. The duel began. Obi-Wan attacked using the Force, trying to throw rocks and create distance. But Vader controlled the terrain. With a gesture, he disarmed Kenobi, throwing the saber away. Obi-Wan ran to retrieve it, but limping too much, he lacked his former agility. When he turned, Vader was already there. With a swift blow, he cut off Obi-Wan's arm, and the old master collapsed, unconscious. Vader looked to his soldiers. Do not touch him. He walked to the ship. The rear door was ajar. With heavy steps, he entered the dark interior. In the back, kneeling behind crates, Luke glared with hatred and fear. Stay away, the boy shouted. Vader stopped. Something strange echoed in his chest. You're afraid, but you don't need to be, he murmured. Luke tried to escape, but Vader extended his hand, using the Force to pull him. The boy struggled, kicked, screamed, but he was captured. Vader looked into the boy's eyes. Even without knowing who he was, he felt familiarity. Something beyond the Force. Something ancient. He didn't understand why, not yet. The sun was already rising over the dunes when Obi-Wan opened his eyes. Everything was pain at that moment. He tried to breathe, but his throat was raw. He was wrapped in crude cloth, his body covered in sand, and his left arm ended in a bandaged stump. He was among the Tusken Raiders. At first, he thought he was a prisoner, but no, they had saved him, perhaps out of respect for the old warrior who once defeated greater monsters. The shamans treated him in silence. For days, he lay in primitive tents, dreaming of the lost saber and of the boy taken. When he regained the strength to walk, he wandered through the canyons. He returned to the Lars homestead, now cold, in ruins. He searched for traces, a body, a sign that Luke had been lost forever. But he found nothing, only the marks of small feet dragged through the sand, and Imperial ships. He looked up at the sky. He felt guilt burning. He screamed. Alone, on his knees, he screamed as he hadn't since the fall of the Jedi Order. I failed Anakin, and now I've failed his son. But then, as if it were a whisper from the Force, something within him said, he is alive, recovered as much as possible, at least enough to travel. He managed to reach an old contact and, with help, left Tatooine. Alderaan was his only hope. There, Bail Organa received him with sorrow and respect. Luke was taken, Kenobi said. Bail closed his eyes. Then, we must protect Leia more than ever. Obi-Wan hesitated but made a decision. He wanted to tell little Leia the truth. About Anakin, about Padme, and about the twins. Bail authorized the training. She deserves to know who she is. When Leia saw him for the first time, the Force reacted. She didn't understand why, but trusted him immediately. Meanwhile, in the heart of the Empire, a meeting formed in thick shadows. Palpatine, on his metal throne, looked at Vader and the Hunter X. The boy Luke was in custody. He has immeasurable potential, said Palpatine, not hiding his pleasure. You, Lord Vader, will train him. He will be your Sith apprentice. Vader frowned under his helmet. Why wasn't I informed earlier? The Emperor merely smiled. Because the right time is now. This boy is special. The Hunter X remained silent, still in pain, though he had undergone some treatment, aware that his involvement had nearly cost him his life. But Vader knew. There were lies here. Luke spent the first years as a prisoner, but over time the cell became a room. The interrogations turned into conversations. Palpatine was a master at shaping thoughts. He told the boy that his uncles had hidden him, that the Jedi had destroyed his family, that Obi-Wan had abandoned him. Vader watched it all from a distance, suspicious. But when the Emperor ordered that the boy be trained by him, something awakened. In the early trainings, Luke was headstrong, stubborn. But the Force in him was powerful, instinctive, natural. The years passed. Luke grew up within the cold corridors of the Empire. He wore black like his master, trained with lightsabers and wielded the Force with brutal intensity. Vader taught him to control anger, but also to understand fear. Still, something in the boy remained pure, and that confused the Sith Lord. They understood each other as soldiers, as master and apprentice. But there were moments when Luke smiled in a way that reminded Vader of someone he forced himself to forget. Anakin, Padme, and that disturbed him. Meanwhile, on Alderaan, Leia was becoming a warrior. Ben Kenobi was demanding. He trained her in silence, never promising power, only balance. She learned to feel the Force in flowers, in people's words, in hidden intentions. As a child, she levitated objects. By 14, she fought training droids skillfully. By 16, she went on diplomatic missions with Bail Organa and learned to hide the Force. A Jedi's greatest weapon, Obi-Wan said, is knowing when not to fight. But Leia also trained with sabers, and her skills blossomed. Determined, strong, just. In his spare time, Ben meditated. He felt Luke's presence like a distant echo. He's still out there, he told himself, but the darkness surrounding him was thick. He couldn't tell who Luke would become. Bail, on the other hand, was afraid. What if he's already lost? Ben looked at Leia. She is the hope, but he is the balance. At night, he saw flashes of the boy with wide eyes, now with hard features, cold gestures. He felt the Force battling within him, and he feared the day of their reunion. While Leia learned to protect, Luke learned to destroy. Field missions, prisoner torture, infiltration. Vader watched, proud. But silently he questioned. The Emperor lies. As he lied to me. At times Vader tested Luke. Asked about his past. About his dreams. Luke responded with short, programmed phrases. But once, on a mission, he hesitated. I saw a house. In the desert. Burning. Have I been there before? Vader fell silent. The doubt had been planted. And so had the fear. At 20, Luke was a general in the Empire. He commanded squadrons, massacred rebel cells, used sabers and wore the Imperial uniform. He was feared, but also respected. But Palpatine watched them both with snake eyes. On Alderaan, Leia also turned 20, now a diplomat in appearance, but a Jedi in secret. Obi-Wan taught her about compassion but also about war. The time will come, he said, and you will need to choose between blood and the future. In the meditation chamber, Ben called her. He sat before her. You are ready, he said. And there's something you need to know. He revealed that the Imperial general who had recently destroyed the rebel forces was Luke Skywalker. Her brother, Leia, paled. He is the assassin general? This monster who's killed so many rebel allies. Ben nodded. It's him, but I fear he's been corrupted. Trained by Vader. She stood up, her heart in conflict. He's my brother. He was good. He still can be. And Ben, eyes heavy with burden, replied, yes, and that's why we must try to bring him back. Luke Skywalker marched across the dry fields of Alderaan, his Imperial cloak billowing in the wind as he studied the holographic data projected in front of him. A rebel cell had been identified on the outskirts of an abandoned diplomatic facility. His eyes, cold, focused, revealed not the hesitation of a young man, but the conviction of an officer molded by the Empire. He gave clear orders to Hunter X. Infiltrate, lead a small group of elite soldiers, and eliminate any trace of the resistance. No witnesses, only results, Luke declared before watching them depart. Days passed. No sign, no reports, only silence. Irritated by the lack of answers, Luke decided to investigate personally. With a platoon under his command, he headed to the site of the operation. Upon arrival, the smell of burned bodies already filled the air. Stormtroopers lay dead, many dismembered. Even Hunter X, considered nearly invincible, was down. His body split in half, still wearing an expression of disbelief on his face. In the center of the battlefield, a rebel flag had been raised on an improvised mast made from parts of Imperial armor. Luke clenched his fists. As he approached, his instinct screamed. It was an ambush. Before he could retreat, explosions surrounded his troops and 100 rebels emerged from the hills. The confrontation was brutal. The stormtroopers fought bravely, but they were outnumbered. Lasers crossed the sky in every direction. Screams of command and pain echoed all around. That's when Luke saw her. Rebel leader. An imposing woman, green lightsaber in hand. Princess Leia Organa, he murmured, recognizing her from Imperial records. She looked at him with fury in her eyes. You're the one who killed X. Now it's my turn. Leia charged, saber raised, and Luke, surprised, activated his own. The fight was fierce. The first clash was fast. Leia struck with elegance, while Luke countered with mechanical precision. In the second exchange, she used the Force to hurl debris at him, but Luke sliced the projectiles midair. In the third, she tried to distract him with rebel soldiers, but he cut them down mercilessly. In the fourth, he pushed her back with a wave of dark energy that slammed her against a wall. In the fifth, she leapt over him, striking with both arms, nearly hitting his neck. In the sixth, he knocked her saber away with a kick and overpowered her. But before the final blow, a figure emerged from the rubble. Obi-Wan Kenobi, the old master, face firm, ignited his blue saber and entered the fight. Now it was 2 against 1. Luke, though skilled, began to lose ground. Obi-Wan was older, but still fought well and provided excellent support for his student. He coordinated attacks with Leia, pushing Luke on the defensive. Finally, after a sequence of synchronized blows, Luke's saber was thrown aside, and he was knocked down and bound with magnetic cuffs. Panting and confused, he looked at Leia and Kenobi as if for the first time. The battle was over for now. During the flight away from Alderaan, inside a rebel ship, Leia and Kenobi watched Luke, unconscious in a medical capsule. He was shaped by the Empire, Leia said bitterly. Is there still anything good left in him? Obi-Wan looked on with sorrow. Yes, he is not a monster. He is a prisoner of lies. They decided to take him to Dagobah, where Master Yoda awaited them after using the Force to sense the events and communicate with his former Jedi Council companion. There, perhaps the Force could bring Luke back. The plan was bold and desperate, but there was hope. On the swampy planet, Yoda received them in silence, eyes narrowed, but soon began questioning and making everyone understand his cheeky personality. Luke was taken to the ancient Force cave, where he would face not only memories, but fragments of what he had become. Yoda guided meditations, used hallucinogenic plants, ancient chants, and words that struck the soul. "Undo what was forged in darkness," he said. Leia always at Luke's side, helping Obi-Wan free Luke from the dark side of the Force. Inside the cave, Luke saw visions. The murder of Owen and Beru, the torture of prisoners, Leia's crying face, and his own face covered by a black mask. He screamed, cried, fought, and finally he emerged. When Luke opened his eyes, they were red, but not with rage, rather with regret. Leia approached. He whispered, "Forgive me, I didn't know." She held his hand. "You're my brother. I always knew there was good in you." They embraced, with the strength of those who had been separated by lies and reunited by destiny. There, among the mists and creatures, two children of fate sealed a pact. They would never be lost to each other again. Obi-Wan and Yoda watched from afar. "They are our last hope," said Kenobi. "Yes," replied Yoda, smiling with effort. "Doubled our hope now is." They knew the fate of the galaxy rested on the twins. The plan was simple but risky. Use Luke's access to the Empire to infiltrate its defenses, install virus-coded programs into the main systems, and allow the rebel fleet to launch a massive attack. But it wasn't just a physical war. It was also a war of hearts and minds, and the final confrontation was approaching. Using still valid codes, Luke led Leia into the inner corridors of the Imperial base. Disguised and with the virus hidden in their devices, they passed through command centers, officers' rooms, engineering areas. The data began to infiltrate. The shields would soon fail. The rebel fleet was already on its way. The mission was proceeding as planned, until, upon approaching the throne room, something unexpected happened. The door to the Imperial Hall opened automatically. Expecting to see Palpatine on his throne, they witnessed a terrible and unexpected scene. Darth Vader, saber ignited, stabbing his own master through the chest. Palpatine widened his eyes in disbelief. "You were mine," he whispered, before collapsing in a burst of dark energy. Luke and Leia froze. None of it made sense? Or did it make all the sense? The hall fell silent. The Emperor's body hit the ground with a final thud, and the darkness surrounding the Empire seemed to tremble. Luke took a step forward. "Why?" he murmured for the first time. Vader, still with his back turned, did not answer. Leia grabbed her brother's arm. "If this is real, then maybe there's a new path." But what had led Darth Vader to betray his master? The answer would come in the next chapter, and with it, the fate of the entire galaxy. Lightsabers lit up the dark hallway of the Imperial Citadel. The metallic sound of clashing blades echoed through the walls as Luke and Leia faced Darth Vader, their own father. Bursts of energy trembled around them as the tension grew with every blow. Vader advanced with brutal force. "I killed Palpatine," he said, his harsh voice muffled by mechanical breath. "He lied about you, Luke. You are my son." Luke hesitated, eyes wide. "Then why are you still fighting us?" Vader spun his saber masterfully. "Because together we can rule, father and son. End this war once and for all." Leia advanced, stopping beside Luke, green saber in hand. "We don't want to rule through fear, father. We are your children, but we are not your soldiers." Vader hesitated for a second, but the conflict exploded again. The three launched into a fierce confrontation. Vader dominated with precision and power, pushing Luke back, immobilizing Leia with the Force. "You don't understand what's at stake," he shouted. "The Empire is the only possible order." Luke struggled to maintain balance, panting. "At what cost? How many lives are justified for this control?" The fight reached its peak. Luke tried using the Force to push Vader, but was blocked. Leia spun and tried to strike him from the side, but Vader easily dodged. He was more powerful, more experienced, and in that moment he realized he was about to kill his own children. The saber paused midair. The sound of his mechanical breathing became irregular. He looked at them, eyes filled with rage, pain, and courage. For an instant he didn't see Luke and Leia, he saw Padme. Her words, her face, her love. The memory pierced his mind. There's still good in you. That moment of hesitation was all Leia needed. With a cry muffled by emotion, she spun her saber and drove it into the back of the black armor. Vader dropped to his knees. Sparks flew from his chest. "Forgive me," he whispered, breath faltering. Luke rushed to him and held him before he fully collapsed. "Father," he murmured in shock. The light from the broken mask revealed an aged, scarred face, but human. Outside, the battle raged. Explosions lit the skies. The Empire's defenses crumbled. But in that dark hall, a flame was rekindled. Luke and Leia embraced in silence. They had lost their father, but saved each other. Now, together, they would guide the galaxy toward something new, not through domination, but by choice. A new hope rose from the ashes.